I'm gonna be a little bit short on today's quota.
Come on, buddy, how many?
I made, 85?
915 off the pace.
Why don't you just say it? I'm the worst toy maker in the world. I'm a cotton-headed ninny-muggins.
Elf wasn't supposed to become a Christmas legend. It wasn't supposed to redefine holiday movies, resurrect forgotten filmmaking techniques, or launch Jon Favreau into the stratosphere.
We just kind of rolled the camera and I would walk up and hug people. If the camera wasn't close by, not only would New Yorkers walk by, they would avoid me. Of course, that would just make me want to pursue them even more.
In 2003, it was just a bizarre little gamble. A 6'3" man in yellow tights wandering through New York with nothing but innocence, chaos, and a mouth full of syrup. But what no one realized was that behind the candy-coated laughs were hidden battles, near disasters, lost scripts, secret cameos, and moments so strange they almost derailed the entire film. This is the story behind Elf, the misfit Christmas movie that shouldn't have worked, but somehow changed holiday cinema forever. Number 1. Favreau's rewrite that found the magic. Upon opening the Elf script for the first time, Jon Favreau did not observe any magical occurrences. A friend who seemed more cynical than sweet, a North Pole that didn't smell like anyone's childhood, and a PG-13 comedy with sharper edges were all things that he saw. Even if it was hilarious, it was not timeless. This is hardly the kind of Christmas story that your parents would tell your children 20 years from now. The script was then completely rewritten from the ground up by Favreau, who tore it apart. As he was growing up, he watched every single rank and base special, as well as Rudolph Santa Claus's Coming to Town. He loved it. He desired for the North Pole to have a sense of being handcrafted. There were vivid colors, gentle shadows, toys made of wood, and snow that appeared to be cotton batting powder. Imagine a world in which being innocent was not considered a sign of weakness. That is the point that was being made. That transformation brought forth a whole new world. It was no longer the case that Buddy was a snarky adult dressed as an elf. Suddenly, he was a toddler with wide eyes living inside of a man's body. As someone whose innocence disarmed every cynical New Yorker he came into contact with, there was no disappearance of the jokes. Not only did they become more pliable, but they also warmed the film from the inside out. A script was not the only thing that Favreau rewrote. He reworked the film's spirit, transforming Elf into the motion picture that comes the closest to being a live Christmas memory in the modern cinematic world. The script that landed on Jon Favreau's desk wasn't whimsical, warm, or even particularly Christmassy. It was sharp, cynical, and missing the sparkle audiences didn't yet know they needed. But inside those pages, Favreau sensed a buried heartbeat, one he was determined to revive, even if he had to rebuild the North Pole from scratch. Number 2. Farley's Lost Elf That Never Lived. Before Buddy sang even a single Christmas carol, before he marched around New York City and greeted every individual he encountered, Elf was the property of someone else entirely. The author David Barenbaum completed the first draft of the work in the year 1993, a rendition that is centered on the enormous, messy, and endearing energy that Chris Farley exudes. A friend with a rating of PG-13, a cleaner script, and a narrative that has more sting than shine. In terms of tone, it wasn't quite magic yet, but Farley would have absolutely dominated it. And when the unfortunate turn of events occurred in Farley's life, the project was left in a state of limbo. New Line, a studio that was still in the process of determining who it wanted to be, received the script after the writer waited out the studio option, took it across town, and made the delivery. John Berg, an executive, exerted a great deal of pressure, believing that this peculiar holiday fable concealed something of great significance. His producer gave his okay, and then he presented the pitch that completely altered the situation. However, what about Will Ferrell, Will was not a famous public figure. He was not demonstrated to be guilty. He was not a smart option to make. However, New Line decided to go ahead and make a Christmas movie that would cost $30 million and feature a man dressed as an elf. The risk that was taken did not merely pay off. What a Christmas classic could be was rewritten by this work. Before Buddy ever touched a strand of tinsel, the role was moments away from belonging to a completely different legend. One whose version of Elf would have changed Christmas movies forever. But when fate intervened, Hollywood was left staring at a script with no star, and a studio wondering whether the magic had died before it even began. Number 3. How Elf launched Favreau's rise. There was no enchantment there when Jon Favreau opened the Elf script for the first time. He saw a PG-13 comedy with more edge, a friend who was more cynical than nice, and a North Pole that did not feel like anyone's childhood. He was surprised by all of these things. It was humorous, although it was not very old. This is not the kind of Christmas story that parents would tell their children more than 20 years later. In order to rewrite the script from scratch, Favreau tore it up and started from scratch. Every single rank and base program that he had watched as a child, as well as Rudolph Santa Claus's Coming to Town, he drowned himself in. He desired for the North Pole to have a sense of craftiness. Bright colors, gentle shadows, toys made of wood, and snow, the appearance of cotton batting, were all present. A world in which being innocent was not considered a sign of weakness. That was the key point all along. All of that was altered by that transformation. The snarky adult who was dressed as an elf was no longer Buddy. In the body of a man, he transformed into a broad-eyed youngster. Every jaded New Yorker he encountered was disarmed by someone whose purity. It was not the jokes that vanished. The film was simply warmed from the inside out as they became more pliable. It's not only that Favreau rewrote the script. Elf is now the closest thing that contemporary cinema has to a live Christmas memory because he reinvented the meaning of the film's essence. Number 4. Voices that secretly shaped the pole. There was more to Favreau than just directing. He turned out to be the clandestine beating heart of the North Pole. He gave the voice of the teeny-tiny puffin that is urging Buddy to leave the North Pole with apprehension. "Bye, Buddy," he said in his voice as the narwhal waves goodbye. "I hope you are able to locate your father." Even more impressively, he provided the voice for the irate raccoon that launches itself at Buddy in Central Park. He recorded this role while laughing so hard that the sound team asked him to reconsider his lines. The North Pole was treated by Favreau as if it were a live rank and base playground, and he filled it with characters that had the experience of being homemade and honest. In spite of the fact that you are unable to see him, he is present everywhere, bringing warmth into the world one creature at a time. Herein lies the secret behind Elf's magical abilities. Even as he was recording, Favreau directed with a joyful spirit. Number 5. Duet that rewrote joy forever. Zooey Deschanel was not under any circumstances expected to be an elf. She stepped into a character that had been scripted for someone else, and she didn't join the cast until the very last minute. Then Jon Favreau heard her sing, and as soon as he did, everything changed. Her voice was gentle, smooth, and almost traditional. From the ground up, he reworked the lyrics to joy. All of a sudden, she became more than just Buddy's crush. She was a timid employee at the department store, and she disguised a voice that she did not want another person to hear. The shower duet was not included in the script at any point. Within the context of Deschanel's tone, Favreau constructed the entire situation. A movie that is great for rediscovering its innocence because it is intimate, sensitive, and wonderful. What was once a casting rush turned out to be one of the most memorable scenes in contemporary Christmas films. When Buddy was not intended to hear a song, it turned out to be the moment when the entire world fell in love with joy. Number 6. Ralphie's cameo hiding in plain view. A significant number of individuals see Elf on an annual basis without being aware that a Christmas legend is standing right next to Buddy in the North Pole. It is Peter Billingsley, Ralphie himself from A Christmas Story, who is the chief elf who gently reminds Buddy that he is not a cotton-headed ninmuggen. After 20 years of wearing elf glasses, he has slid into the part in such a way that even fans who have been with him for their entire lives miss him. When Favreau cast Billingsley, he did so in part as a joke among his friends and in part as a love letter. One of the most beloved Christmas traditions is being passed on to you. The Red Ryder BB pistol was traded in for a clipboard, a workshop, and the responsibility of managing the most excited elf who had ever been born. Billingsley accepted the situation and embraced it. It's one of the most ingenious, subtly hidden elements in the movie. Whoever it was that helped create the next generation of Christmas films without anyone realizing. The youngster who defined Christmas films. When Ralphie was growing up right in front of us, he made a cameo that was so understated that it only worked. Number 7. Buddy unleashed on real NYC streets. Jon Favreau performed something on the last day of filming that only a courageous director or a naughty elf would attempt to do under those circumstances. Through his actions, he reduced the entire team to a mere 3 individuals. Everyone in the group, including himself, a cameraman, and Will Ferrell, dressed up as Buddy. There were no extras, no audiences that were produced, and no permissions. It was just a 6-foot 3-inch elf who was set wild in the streets of Manhattan. Ferrell traveled around New York in the same manner as Buddy would visit the city, leaping over crosswalks, waving at taxis, and hugging passers-by who were unaware that a movie was being filmed. He would grab flyers as if they were magical missions, and he would even get his shoes cleaned as he was talking to people who were walking by who were confused. Every single smile, every single bewildered stare, and every single inadvertent double take was absolutely genuine. There is no acting in those photos that are used in the final montage. They are the ones that appear to be unrehearsed and incredibly joyful. The fact that they are New Yorkers reacting to a very passionate elf who sincerely believed that the city was his Christmas playground is the reason why the scene is successful. It is Buddy who is entering our planet, and the world is immediately returning to its previous state. In a last-minute gamble that could have shut down production, he sent Will Ferrell into real New York City traffic, real crowds, and real chaos, armed with nothing but pure Buddy energy. The reactions weren't staged, the smiles weren't actors, and what they captured became some of the most magical footage in the entire movie. Number 8. Sugar binge that wrecked Ferrell. Not only does Buddy enjoy sugar, but he consumes it as if it were a constituent of the food group. However, behind the scenes, each and every bite that was drenched in syrup was genuine. Will Ferrell did, in fact, consume the spaghetti that was drenched in maple syrup, the breakfasts that were loaded with sugar, the Coke that was consumed, and even the cotton candy cotton balls that were consumed in the doctor's scene. He felt the effects of the constant sugar. Afterwards, Ferrell admitted that the diet caused him to experience pounding migraines, insomnia, and waves of nausea that made entire shooting days feel like he was riding a Christmas coaster that he couldn't get off of. Despite these symptoms, Ferrell persevered and refused to pretend that Buddy's presence was a constant presence in his meals. With each absurd bite, Buddy's magic got more and more pronounced. Although it was the most delightful performance on TV, it was followed by the most disastrous sugar crash. Buddy's candy-coated joy might look charming on screen, but behind the scenes, every syrup-soaked bite pushed Will Ferrell closer to physical collapse. What the audience saw as sweet innocence became, for Ferrell, a real-life sugar nightmare that nearly derailed filming. Number 9. Ferrell gag that broke James Caan. There is just one reason why James Caan was hired. Someone who would not break down was what Jon Favreau required. It was important to him to find an actor who was a hard-edged old-school performer, who could stand next to Will Ferrell's enormous Christmas energy without showing any fear. In addition, Caan maintained his unwavering, stone-faced composure throughout the majority of the shoot, making him the ideal contrast to Buddy's sugar-fueled mayhem. The scene of the blood test then took place. Ferrell was waiting for the finger to be pricked while he held out his hand. Additionally, he let out that high-pitched, ferocious scream whenever even the slightest needle made contact with his flesh. The script did not include that. It had not been in rehearsal. In every way, it was wild. Suddenly, absurdly, and louder than anyone could have anticipated. For a fraction of a second, Caan was defeated in the fight. If you pay close attention, you will notice that he walks away from the camera, his shoulders quivering as he attempts to conceal the smile that he couldn't contain. This was the one moment in a movie that was built on Buddy's relentless cheer that even the strongest guy in the room had no defense for. Even James Caan was unable to maintain his composure when the Christmas mayhem reached full intensity. Number 10. North Pole built by human. Jon Favreau did not want Elf to have a contemporary quality. His goal was to make it feel as if it were remembered in the same way as the stop-motion specials that were broadcast once a year and remained in the mind of children forever. Therefore, rather than populating the North Pole with computers, he eliminated computer-generated imagery, CGI, from the project almost entirely. Everything from the snowdrifts to the creatures and the teeny-tiny elf workshops was constructed by hand. Due to the use of forced perspective, Buddy stands taller than the elves. In place of digital worlds, miniature sets were used. The paintings of Matt served as a substitute for expansive skylines. In order to recreate the rank and base appearance that Favreau admired when he was younger, even the narwhal, the puffin, and the Arctic species were recreated frame by frame within the game. And this is the bit that the majority of people overlook. It was Favreau's refusal to conceal the seams. What would happen if the edges of two sets of various sizes did not completely align with each other? He abandoned them. According to him, the flaws gave the movie a more rustic feel, as if it were something that was produced rather than manufactured. This option is the reason why Elf continues to feel like it has stood the test of time. The technology has not been used to polish it. By the hands of humans, it is formed, and that enchantment is manifested in each and every frame. Number 11. Mailroom confession that almost died. This scene in the mailroom was supposed to be straightforward. A co-worker of Buddy's puts wine into a cup, but Buddy misinterprets it as syrup and pours himself a glass of wine instead. The two of them get drunk together and form a bond over what Buddy considers to be nothing more than another delectable treat. Nevertheless, actor Mark Ayrson delivered a single improvised sentence that completely halted the production. A sigh came out of nowhere from him. The group let out a chuckle. Bringing that wide-eyed Buddy sympathy that only he could provide, Will Ferrell leaned in closer to the situation. And Jon Favreau knew without a doubt that this was a golden opportunity. In Buddy's emotional language, it is human, absurd, and completely fits the bill. But when producers screened the cut, They hated it. They maintained that no one would believe that he is 26 years old, and they demanded that the entire interaction be erased. Favreau resisted with great force. However, the joke was false. The melancholy, the timing, and the candor of the words. That was the thing that made the moment joyful. He put up a fight for it. He did not give it up. This minuscule and peculiar admission ended up being one of Elf's most frequently cited sentences. This is evidence that the truth that is manifestly not real at all is sometimes the truth that is the most hilarious. It was supposed to be a tiny throwaway scene, nothing more than a silly, drunken moment in a dusty basement. But one unscripted line changed everything, sending the crew into hysterics and igniting a battle between the director and the studio over a joke too weird, too honest, and too perfect to erase. Number 12. Santa Brawl. It was shot in a single chaotic take. Buddy's attempt to charge the phony gimbal Santa appears to be a hectic process. In addition to toys flying, decorations blasting, 5 miniature skyscrapers that were created and constructed like Lego sculptures. They were bonded together just enough to be able to stand. It was the intention of the art team to have the entire setup collapse only once. Every single piece of the towers was wired to fall apart the moment the battle started, and the structures themselves were unstable. When it came to timing, Will Ferrell and Artie Lang had precisely one opportunity to do it right. Neither the wreckage nor the stunt doubles that were reorganizing the aftermath were rehearsed. During the time that the cameras were following them through the chaos, every single collision and tumble was taking place in real time. Because of this, the fight appears to be chaotic and is almost uncontrollable, because it actually was. On the cue, there were 2 performers, one unplanned fight, and a set that was built to die. It was not because the sequence was flawless that it became a classic. Rather, it became a classic because it was the most happy disaster that had ever been captured in a single take. Number 13. Elf Hockey. A moment of total chaos innocence occurred for Buddy a long time before he raced through revolving doors or consumed pasta that was coated in syrup. A full-fledged elf hockey game that was shot on a frozen pond in the North Pole Territory. The scene started off in a pleasant manner. As Buddy wobbled over the ice like a giraffe on roller skates, he was surrounded by teeny-tiny elves who were skating circles around him and gave him encouragement. But Buddy, the second, made an attempt to join in on the excitement. All of the pieces broke apart. As a result of his zeal, he damaged everything. He slid into the elves like bowling pins, smashing everyone and seemingly ruining the entire rink. In the end, he ended up sending the hockey puck and the goalkeeper flying into the snow at the same time. Frell enthusiastically put himself into the slapstick performance, and the team could hardly contain their laughs as they did so. It was a giant. It came at a high cost. Wow, that was hilarious. As it was being edited, it passed away. For the sake of speed, Favreau eliminated the entire sequence, leaving behind just hints of the icy turmoil that the audience was never able to witness. Some scenes are worthy of being included in a film. This particular one deserves a spot in legend, as it is the most epic Buddy meltdown that spectators have never seen before. Number 14. Christmas hit that refused to fade. It was not anticipated that Elf would be a smash when it was released. The season was meant to be dominated by epics and sequels, but Yellow Tights, a Christmas comedy that cost $33 million and starred a former Saturday Night Live cast member, ended up dominating the box office. When Buddy was released in theaters in November of 2003, however, an extraordinary event took place. It seems that families kept coming back. Theater after theater, weekend after weekend, and theater after theater. Through the power of word of mouth, a very little release became a phenomenon. At the conclusion of its run, Elf had amassed more than $220 million in revenue around the globe, making it one of the top-grossing Christmas comedies in the recorded history of the genre. Even more impressive was the size of its second life. Every December, the number of reruns increases, the number of streaming users skyrockets, and the number of DVD sales increases as if the movie were spanking new once more. After a few seasons, the majority of Christmas films lose their appeal. The Elf did not die out. Until Buddy the Elf became more than just a character, it continued to rise year after year until it eventually became a holiday tradition that has not yet been abandoned. You are free to bring that tradition back with you if it continues to hold significance for you, because you have the ability to do so. Simply click on the links provided below to obtain the Blu-ray, DVD, or 4K Ultra HD version. Let's go back to Buddy's world a moment ago, shall we? Instead of fading like most holiday releases, Elf grew stronger every single week, until a $33 million comedy about a sugar-addicted elf outperformed blockbusters and rewrote Christmas box office history. But the real miracle? Number 15. Sequel offer. Ferrell left the studio and expressed his desire for a re-release of the film. The crowd expressed a desire for a sequel, and Will Ferrell was offered a salary that was substantial enough to get media attention. To bring Buddy back, it will cost $29 million. However, Ferrell declined the offer before the ink had even dried. When Buddy, who was in his middle years, tried to squeeze into the green tights, he imagined that he would feel forced and possibly even sad. Furthermore, if the heart were not genuine, the joke would not be genuine either. Keeping Elf safe means allowing it to exist independently. One story that is sincere and about innocence in a society that is full of cynicism. Sometimes the most courageous thing to do is not to do more. Knowing when one perfect movie is enough is the key to success. An additional fact: not a single person anticipated that Buddy would be able to fill a theater the way he had filled the North Pole when Elf made the move from the film to Broadway in the year 2010. But he did, despite the fact that it was a holiday miracle that even seasoned producers were surprised by. The musical was a smashing success right from the start, bringing in more than $1.4 million in a single week. This was a new record for the Al Hirschfeld Theater. Giant dance routines, glitter-wrapped scenery, and a score that was designed to feel like Christmas morning were all elements that were incorporated into the reimagining of Buddy. A number of critics referred to it as sugar-sprinkled joy, and crowds regarded it as if it were a yearly destination. A resurgence occurred in the year 2012. Next came travels around the nation. Every December, it is still performed at schools and theaters in the surrounding area. Not only did Buddy dominate the film industry, taking control of the stage, he transformed a single Christmas comedy into a tradition that continues to this day. The film Elf did not become a classic due to its effects or its incredible spectacle. The fact that it brought to mind something straightforward, something that we tend to forget far too often, is what made it a classic. That marvel is still in operation, that happiness is still crucial, and that there are times when the world requires a tall and awkward elf to remind us of the goodness that may be found in individuals. There was a heart provided by Will Ferrell. The magic was manipulated by Jon Favreau. However, the reason why Elf continues to exist is because, year after year, families continued coming back to see it and laughing at the same moments. Having the same feeling of warmth, giving the movie to the next generation, is like a ritual that refuses to die out. Leave a comment below and tell us about your favorite part of this story, if it has managed to boost your spirits even a tiny bit. The snowball fight, the spaghetti, the rotating door, or any other memory that has the power to bring you back here. The reason for this is that the best Christmas stories not only entertain us, but they also remain with us long after the lights have been turned off as well. Elf didn't just survive the Christmas movie battlefield, it conquered it. Through sugar crashes, one-take disasters, forgotten cameos, and movie magic held together with glue and forced perspective, Buddy the Elf became a tradition that refuses to fade. And every year, when the lights dim and the snow starts to fall, families return to this world, laughing at the same chaos, quoting the same lines, and feeling the same warmth that made Elf a classic in the first place. If this breakdown gave you even one new detail you never noticed, do Buddy a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the movies you love. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite Elf moment: the snowball fight? The spaghetti? The revolving door scene? Thanks for watching, and remember, the best Christmas stories aren't just watched, they're passed on.